can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video is going to be X-Men number 21 by Gerry Duggan and Stefano Caselli. This issue is pretty wild to me because, what we're really talking about here is the difference between whether or not you should condemn someone or something or offer them redemption. And for those who know what I'm talking about, over the last several issues of the X-Men series under Gerry Duggan, the X-Men have been dealing with the Brood. Now, this is also a part of a larger crossover that's going on right now between the X-Men and Captain Marvel, the revenge of the Brood, in a story where on both Captain Marvel's side of things, where she's dealing with the Brood from the perspective that she's working alongside the X-Men to, as well as her own allies, to try and stop the Brood, who have seemingly taken a vested interest in Carol's newly spawned Quotey Fingers sister, Binary, the very essence of the binary power that was already in Carol Danvers that was separated during the last of the Marvel's story arc. The story arc where the Vox Supreme had separated the binary power of Captain Marvel and turned it into its own entity. And then, of course, on the other side of things, we have the rest of the X-Men who responded to a distress call from Cyclops' father, Corsair, that a Brood invasion was coming. And since then, both Captain Marvel and the X-Men have been caught up in this whirlwind of Brood shenanigans at a time where the Brood are not supposed to be acting out and trying to invade other planets, because they're supposed to be under the control of Brood, who during 2020's X-Men number 9 had eaten a king egg, giving him control over the entire hive. But since then, we've learned that Nightmare, the villain largely associated with Doctor Strange, who is the lord of the dream dimension, he had, for all intents and purposes, snatched control of the Brood from Brood by manipulating the Brood's dreams. Now, one thing to point out here in regards to whether or not the Brood can be redeemed, or even should they be redeemed, is the idea that while Nightmare was technically unleashing the Brood, it was exactly that, just unleashing. He wasn't technically manipulating them in any way, shape, form, or fashion. He just broke Brood's control of them. Now, that said, he did in a roundabout way direct them towards what he felt was his own enemies in the X-Men, more specifically Jean Grey, who in 2021's X-Men number 4 had pretty much bitch slapped the taste out of Nightmare's mouth. All of this has led to what is probably one of the most petty reasons for an alien invasion I think has ever been recorded. Once again, we get back to the idea, should the Brood be redeemed or should they be condemned? Cyclops definitely seems to be leaning towards the condemnation, and honestly, it's for pretty good reason. The Brood, without any real actual excuse to even be able to say, oh, Nightmare was controlling us and making us do these things, the Brood just reverted back to what they've always done, and they have sacrificed countless number of people throughout the years, going all the way back to Uncanny X-Men number 155 back in 1982. They have been nothing short of monsters with very few instances of any actual chance for change. Now, Brood would be the best hope for them because Brood does now once again have control of a select number of the hive now that Nightmare's hold over them have been broken, but for all intents and purposes, it's a very small number. And while maybe they can possibly be redeemed, Jean Grey certainly seems to believe so, and Jean Grey is very big on redemption as of late, if for no other reason than her actions while she was the Phoenix, but also even some of the more recent things that have come up in Gerry Duggan's X-Men, as well as some of the stuff that happened during Kieran Gillen's Judgment Day. Right now, she believes in redemption over anything else, and it begs the question, will the next time we see the Brood, at least after the Revenge of the Brood story arc is over completely, will the next time we see the Brood be any different than what it has been? That is the real big question here, and I do believe that Brood can change the Brood. I believe he can because technically he has. The Brood were, while they were under Brood's control, actually working alongside the X-Men, not necessarily so much directly, but they were actually doing favors and tasks for the mutants and Krakoa as a whole up until Brood lost control of most of the hive. So yes, I think there is actually room for redemption here. And I feel like this is a case study in something I've talked about before, about no one group of people is a monolith. It's that idea that, oh, well, if one person of a particular group acts this way, that means they all act this way. If one particular person of a group thinks a certain way, then all of the people in that group think the exact same way. And while you can definitely make a case for the Brood maybe potentially being a monolith, I do think that with Brood being considered a mutant among his own people, him not exactly thinking the way other Brood do, there is a case to be made that the Brood are not a monolith. Now, it's definitely to say they have some predispositions towards certain things. However, I think with the benefit of time and a little bit of patience, especially with Brood overlooking them, now that they have a home thanks to the efforts of Forge and Monet, a part of this Brood storyline that I honestly didn't think was going anywhere particularly important, but as it turns out, all of their misadventures going into nowhere and all the wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff that they dealt with and trying to get back home, all of that got pretty much undone when Monet was able to get a message out to Magic, and Magic was able to teleport to nowhere that was, mind you, inside of a singularity and get them out. But they were also able to give Brood a chance to take the Brood to nowhere, the floating celestial head severed by Null that once served as the home base of the Guardians of the Galaxy. They are able to give nowhere to Brood and his Brood. Now, this means they will be isolated from not just humanity, but from everything. They will be cut off from everything for the foreseeable future. So it's highly likely after Revenge of the Brood, we won't see Brood for quite some time, or at least I wouldn't expect to see him in the next issue. But the hope here is that by the next time we see him, maybe the Brood will actually be something better. And maybe they'll be a lot closer to what Brood is. And I think that would be a really huge deal. I think that would be something special to see the Brood actually change their nature. That is something that I would be willing to give Jerry Duggan time to cook and see what comes out of it, if he even addresses this before whenever he decides he no longer wants to write X-Men anymore. All in all, we do know that the rest of the X-Men are going to be answering Quanon, aka Psylocke's distress call, so that they can join in on the fight with Captain Marvel and the rest of the X-Men to try and help stop one of the Brood queens. Now, we don't really know where that's going to go, because honestly, I feel like the timeline here is a little bit off, because I think this week we had Captain Marvel number 48 come out. This book kind of seems to be more in line with the events of Captain Marvel number 46. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see where that goes from there. I think by the time we get back over to the Captain Marvel side of things, maybe we'll have a little bit more information to know what's going on there. I expect, because with Captain Marvel, I think ending at issue number 50, with issue 48 being the one that's out currently, I think it's safe to say we'll see them within the next couple of issues of Captain Marvel, aiding her in destroying the Brood once and for all. But that's another story altogether. All in all, that's pretty much everything I want to talk about with X-Men number 21. This was definitely a pretty sound issue. I think that they did a really good job of creating those questions of whether or not the Brood can or should be redeemed. I think that is a very important question for people to ask themselves. And honestly, I don't think anyone's wrong for feeling the way that they want to feel. Now, I will definitely say I do like how this scene between Jean Grey and Cyclops, where they're debating the fate of the Brood, it is very reminiscent of the X-Men number 100 issue from back in like 1976. We're right before Jean's about to pilot the spaceship, just before she becomes the Phoenix, and she does pretty much the same thing there here in this present day issue of X-Men, where she's using her powers to forcefully get a point across to Cyclops, where in the original case she used her powers to forcefully knock him out so that she could commandeer the ship and sacrifice herself to save the rest of the team. Or rather, in this case, she's using her powers to force Cyclops to look her in the eyes without using the excuse that he can't look her directly in the eyes, without his visors on, because his powers would be unleashed. But no, he's having to look Jean in the eyes and tell her that he wants to commit mass genocide. And honestly, there's even a portion here where Bishop says something largely the same, even though it's technically in a data page where we're seeing a conversation between the different war captains of Krakoa. There's a point where Bishop thinks that they should create a clone body of the Scarlet Witch from back when she was still thought to be a mutant, and have one of their telepaths control the husk of that body, not putting the memories back, but just having someone pilot that clone body of the Scarlet Witch and just have them say, no more Brood, which is kind of wild. And honestly, I expect that from Bishop. But the main reason I think the issue with Bishop is so strange too is because this would effectively be using a tactic that was weaponized against mutant kind that affected mutants for years to come. There are still mutants today in 2023 who are still under the effects of Wanda Maximoff uttering the words "no more mutants" in House of M #7 in 2005, almost 20 years ago. So yeah, I think it's weird and kind of off-putting just a lot that Bishop is thinking about doing this to the Brood. I mean, granted, yeah, they're monsters, but damn. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure to tap that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that I put out. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about X-Men #21. Keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.